I'm Matt McDonald, managing partner of Notley, and today I'm going to talk to you about unit economics and how you can use them to develop earned revenue streams for your nonprofit or social venture. So there's a couple components to unit economics. The first is the revenue, and what we're talking about is the revenue per unit sold. That means the unit in unit economics. So the first thing you have to do is decide what it is that thing or that unit that you're selling. Is it a consulting engagement? Is it a particular product? That's going to be unique to each type of business. But you start with your revenue per unit sold. And what we're trying to understand here is what is the gross margin on the product. So in order to do that, you subtract the cost of goods sold, which is labeled COGS, cost of goods sold, from your revenue. And that gives you your gross margin. Cost of goods sold is the actual cost of the materials or the labor that goes into producing that unit. You could not produce that unit without these costs. So now that you understand at a high level what's the basic profitability of whatever that unit is that you're selling, then you need to allocate two different types of costs. The first is fixed costs. So these are costs that are things like your office lease or the cost of operating your manufacturing facility and the expenses related to it. So in order to allocate those fixed costs per unit, you would take that total expense that you have, it is fixed no matter what you do or how many units you produce, and divide it by the number of units produced to get your fixed cost allocation per unit. The second thing you're going to do is you're going to allocate what's called your selling, general, and administrative expenses to each unit. So these are support staff salaries, mandatory accounting filings, and those sorts of things. The general sort of office and clerical work that you need to do to be able to sell your product or your service. And what you get at the end when you subtract fixed costs and selling, general, and administrative per unit from your gross margin, you get your profit. Now obviously, you want this number to be as big and as positive as possible. And so let's walk through a quick example. So let's imagine that we're in the business of selling hats. We've produced commemorative hats for our nonprofit organization, and we're selling them to potential supporters in order to generate revenue for the work and the mission that we do. So let's say that that hat can be sold for $10. The next thing we need to do is decide what are the costs of the materials that go into that hat. So let's say in this example that those costs are $4. So our cost of goods sold will be $4. That means our gross margin is $6 per unit. So now the question is, are our facilities and our selling and general and administrative expenses that are allocated per unit low enough that we still have profit margin left over? So in this example, let's imagine that we pay $100 a year for our factory where we manufacture these hats, and that we can manufacture 100 hats a year. That means that we're going to have $1 of fixed costs per unit that we're going to subtract from our gross margin. And the next thing that we need to subtract from our gross margin is the fixed selling, general, and administrative expenses. The selling, general, and administrative expenses allocated per unit. So in this example, let's imagine that we also pay $100 per year on SG&A to produce 100 hats. In this example, it's again subtracting $1 per unit. And what we end up with is a profit margin of $4 per hat. So this is an accurate picture of the unit economics in this example of selling an individual hat on behalf of your nonprofit to generate income to serve your mission or further the goals of your organization.